We've been going for about 2.5 years, having forums on the fourth Thursday of the month now at 2 o'clock, so you're welcome to join us. I would say though that we're taking 2 months off. July and August we will not have forums, so this is our last one until September, and we're looking at ideas for the September forum. So if you have topics that you want us to consider, or if you have people that you particularly think would be valuable for us to have present with us, please do pass those names on to me, and I'll be happy to contact them and set this up. It's been a very, I think, important and rewarding thing to do these forums because awareness, education, community education around this topic is really, really important. And the more that the community can become aware of it, and also can become dementia friendly is the term nowadays, dementia friendly, supportive and understanding. And so we try to build that culture here in Green Valley. And just also to say that besides the forums, we do have another program called Memory Cafe. We call it Esperanza Memory Cafe. Esperanza is the name of the street, and it's the word in Spanish for hope. So Esperanza Cafe is on the second Thursday of the month, also at 2 o'clock. And that group will continue through the summer. They're the brave ones, but it's a lot of fun. It's a socializing program. It's a way for people and caregivers and people with memory issues to come together for an hour, hour and a half, and just to relax, to connect, and get to know each other, and take some pressure off of the isolation that sometimes happens with caregiving relationships. So that's 2 o'clock, and the date is July 10th. Okay, July 10th. Tammy is the coordinator, and so she's the one that can fill you in. And the theme in July is patriotic picnic. Yeah, so we've got a musician. We're going to sing some patriotic songs, and we'll probably have red, white, and blue all over everything. So come and join us for a fun afternoon. So with that, I'm delighted today to welcome James Fitzpatrick here. James Fitzpatrick is, excuse me, I don't know why I'm having a problem with that.
I have a hard time with it sometimes too.
Anyway, James is here from the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm just delighted that he's here. He and I were talking just now, and even though we've been going for 2.5 years, this is the first time we've had someone from Alzheimer's Association here. So help us welcome James, and thank you so much, James, for coming. He's all the way down from Phoenix, by the way. So there we are. Thank you, James.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. As he said, my name is James. I like to run these things as a conversation. I do have a slide at the very end that says questions, but if you have something you want to say, we're all friends. You know, I'm not here to spread any secrets or conspiracy theories or anything like that. But what I am going to do is talk about something that, one, you may not know any of this has actually happened or is happening. And I am going to talk about advocacy and what we do at the Alzheimer's Association to end this disease. One of the things that I want to just get out of the way in general is I tend to use the term dementia more than Alzheimer's. Dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is just a type of dementia. It's the most common type. The Alzheimer's Association is trying to eradicate every type of dementia. And because I work in advocacy, I do interchange, but I do tend to say dementia more. And I'm not trying to disparage any of the types of the diseases. But for what I do on a day-to-day basis, it's just easier. I do have 3 videos. I do hope that they work. I am not a tech person, but I do apologize if they don't. 2 of my videos are 2 stories from some of the advocates that we have here in Arizona. They are really short stories, but I do hope that they work. So the outcomes for today is, I want you to know what advocacy is, what is happening here in Arizona, and what we're doing nationally for those impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia, and how you can advocate, not necessarily for us, just in general. So with advocacy, overall, it means to use your voice for a cause, to invoke change. I have been with the Alzheimer's Association for almost 11 years now. I have always been the advocacy director in Arizona and Nevada. I am an Arizonan. But if I was doing this in Nevada, I'm a Nevadan as well, but I do live in Arizona. Representation is very important. We want to invoke change, and the way that we do that is through public policy. So I am going to be talking about policy advocacy, but I am not here to talk about politics. I do have a video after this that will disparage all of the political stuff. I hope that it works.
Is it not phony?
Our videos might not work. It's tech, you just go with it. My 2 keywords with all of my advocate volunteers is be flexible and expect the unexpected. And this is what this is. I will have Jerry send you all this slideshow, which you will be able to see these videos in it. What this does is say we need to be united. Dementia in the political world is not a red or blue issue. It is purple. The Alzheimer's Association is a nonpartisan organization that does try to make long-term systemic change to have a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia, which is also the vision of the association. I apologize. I'm not used to Apple stuff. No, I think we're good. There we go. Perfect. That makes things easier.
Okay, sure.
We need to make sure that we have all of our elected officials in support of this purple issue. It just so happens that the Alzheimer's Association's color is purple. I don't think originally in 1980 when the Alzheimer's Association was established that they figured this would be like a tagline down the line years later. But I can tell you that we have been making strides to make the vision of the association closer and closer and closer. My job, in general, is to try to put myself out of a job. Because if we achieve this, then they won't need to have me do this anymore. And it's a weird mindset to think that I'm actually working towards not having a job to do this. And I'm okay with that. Because I had a grandmother that passed away from Alzheimer's. In my family, we didn't talk about it. My dad still, and I've been with the association for 11 years, and my grandmother passed away 5 years before I started. So 15, 16 years ago, here I am today. My dad is proud of what I do, but he does not want to talk about what I do. And it used to make me think, why doesn't he? I'm all excited about what I do. I love my job and I love what we do. But he also doesn't want to talk about my mom's cancer that killed her. And I know some of it's generational and some of it's just easier to be out of sight, out of mind. That happened. We can't fix it. But I don't live in that world. I live in advocacy. And we need to be talking about this. There is no shame And if we do not talk about this, we will continue to have people passing away from all the different types of dementia, as well as the impact that these diseases have on their caregivers, which it is not uncommon for the caregiver to pass away before the person with dementia does, due to the stress-related health issues being a 36-hour-a-day caregiver for somebody with dementia. What I'm going to talk about, I hope gives you hope. These are some of our advocates that we have here in Arizona. This just happens to be one from Green Valley. And this was taken 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. And we are meeting with Senator Gallego staffer. Because what we do in advocacy over and over and over again is we share our personal stories. And we hope that it evokes change. We live in a world, we live in a country that right now we're pretty much defined by our political affiliation, and it keeps us separated. When at the end of the day, we all bleed red, and we all are alive. And our political affiliations is just a belief. It's not who we are as individuals. But for this group of people to meet with elected officials over and over and over again, and sharing their story to hopefully have a world without dementia one day is amazing. And does anybody know if anything has ever come to fruition from these stories? Does anybody know any policy that's passed?
I don't, but may I ask you, who is our Green Valley advocate and where is she?
Like, where is she physically today?
Where is she? No, where is she located here in Green Valley?
Physically, that I don't know, but I can find out for you.
Does she have an office here?
No, she's just a volunteer. These are, like, the only staff is me. These are all, well, she works in DC. She works for Senator Gallego. But all of these, they're all volunteers. They just do this because they like it, because they've all been impacted. Her mother passed away 1.5 years ago. Her aunt, her mother's sister, is getting ready to be placed in a memory care facility in Tucson, because that's the closest. Where right now she's like dealing with the fact that, great, my mother's sister has it. Is there a correlation that it runs in the family? Because if it is running in the family, then you're more likely to develop it. If you want to know the most common risk factor of dementia, it's age. But I also like to say, it's if you have a brain. I know not everybody uses their brains, but we all have them. And that is the most common risk factor. More and more, all of the data that we have at the Alzheimer's Association, if you see any of our numbers, 159,000 Arizonans, 7 million Americans, that's all 65 and older. But more and more people are getting diagnosed 65 and under. And even when you get that diagnosis, you've had the disease for a while. An interesting phenomenon with younger onset, so under the age of 65, is the progression of the disease is quicker. In general, the progression could be anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And that's with Alzheimer's. Each type of dementia has a different kind of time span. But this phenomenon with people under the age of 65, like the average time span tends to be like 5 to 10 years. But it's also extremely difficult to get a diagnosis. And that's pretty much at any age. The younger you are, the more difficult it is. But on average, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years. Why that is, I don't know. I will go into a piece of policy that we're actually advocating for now, because in theory, your primary care physician should be able to give you a diagnosis of dementia. To get a more definitive biomarker diagnostic test, which right now there are two primary biomarkers. One is a spinal tap, which does not sound fun. The other is a PET scan, which is extremely expensive. About a month ago, a blood test was approved, but it's not top quality as, say, the PET scan and the spinal tap yet. But we'll get there, yes.
Those are diagnostic tests for specifically,
Just generally. Overall, when I say your primary care physician does not need to be doing a spinal tap or an MRI, they should be doing a screening that you can actually Google one right now and we can print one up. And I'm not saying go out and diagnose yourself, because you can go down a rabbit hole. I had a cold 2 weeks ago and I could WebMD myself and I have cancer. You know, we can all go down a rabbit hole to find all these chronic diseases that we have. But I will say that in general, your primary care physician should. Do they? No. Also, did you know that it's part of the annual Medicare wellness visit? Which doesn't really happen. And we're trying to change that. But I will say with policy, it is extremely slow. And I'm just like making this up. I'm pretty sure you're more likely to win the lottery than get a bill passed in Congress or at the state capitol. But I can tell you, I am going to show you everything that advocates, volunteers, not staff. I am just the catalyst and I am the cheerleader of volunteers to meet with our elected officials to make change. When I show you what we have been able to do, you might need to be picking up your jaws. But if you are picking up your jaws, that means we're not doing a good enough job letting everybody know that this is happening. But if you do get emails from James Fitzpatrick that says advocacy alert, because I do blast these out quite a bit, I apologize, but they are very, very important. You can jump to the next one. The Alzheimer's Association has several pillars. Care and support our programs and services. We have a 24-hour helpline. We do education, support groups, fund development, walk. If you've been involved with us, I'm pretty sure you get walk notices to fundraise for the walk. Research, the association does do research. We also fund research. The association is the third largest funder of dementia research in the world. We are the largest nonprofit funder of research in the country. And we are behind China and the United States. And then public policy. And I always make this joke, and public policy, because even in my own organization, the only time this gets recognized is when we have a success. And I will tell you, some of that is because nonprofits can't lobby, or they can't overtly lobby, because they need to maintain their nonprofit status, and it's a tax status. There is a tax status for lobbying nonprofits. Other nonprofits, like the association, has one. Like for the American Cancer Society, theirs is called the Cancer Action Network. Ours is called the Alzheimer's Impact Movement. They're based in DC. I'm an employee of the Alzheimer's Association, but all of my guidance comes from the Alzheimer's Impact Movement. So I will say, as an employee of the association, and you don't, this is just fodder, but I will tell you, all of my guidance comes from my guidance, my goals, everything comes from a completely separate entity So I don't get all of the information that my coworkers, who all report to Chicago, and they don't get any of my stuff from DC. But we're a large organization, and like large organizations, companies, communication is always the biggest barrier, and we need to work on that. And I will say, even with here, we should be here more often. We should be in Green Valley. The association should be, we have an office in Tucson. We have staff in Tucson. We're supposed to be out in the community. I travel all over the place. So everybody should. You can go on the next slide. Within public policy, we do a wide variety of things, but the biggest is sharing your story. And it's really interesting when I say share your story. I'm very long-winded. I like to talk. Most of the advocates have told me that in their day-to-day life, they are not generally talkers, which I don't know them as anything but it's a real skill when you share your story and you only have 2 minutes to do it. And you think, how can my 2-minute story invoke change, especially in today's political climate? And I'm just going to give you a quick teaser. Advocates at the federal level last year passed 3 pieces of legislation and 2 appropriations. And I'll get into that, and I'll actually explain like a little bit. I'll explain the legislation, but I'll also explain like the importance of like what we got passed and how we got it passed. And this right here, just this photo, if you haven't heard from the association, we are in the age of treatment. There are treatments for people with early stage Alzheimer's, only Alzheimer's. And it is like that sweet window between mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's. The first treatment was introduced in 2021. The first disease-modifying treatment was introduced in 2021. That treatment is no longer on the market. There are currently 2 others. One is called Leqembi, and the other one is called Kisunla. Because why do we not name medications just normal names? I don't know, that's the drug companies. But both of these medications came out within the last 5 years. They're both intravenous treatments. There have been symptomatic medications for decades. So if you've had if there's anybody in this room or any of your loved ones or anybody that you know in the past that has been told by their doctor, here, I'm going to give you a prescription for Aricept, Namenda, Exelon, any of these cholinesterase inhibitors, and it is going to slow the progression of your disease, is a lie. They're symptomatic. It's just like if you have a fever and you take Tylenol, it may make you feel better, but you still have a fever. Those medications were like that, and they're still out there, and I'm not against any of those medications. If they work, they work. But the only things that have been shown to reduce the progression of the disease is these things that have just come out in the last couple of years. I can say this gentleman right here, who I do have a video, but I don't think it's going to play, has been on Leqembi for 2 years now. His MoCA score, his cognitive screening score, has actually increased by 2 points from when he started. So he's staying. There was a gentleman, while we were in DC a couple of weeks ago, at our big advocacy forum where advocates from all across the country traveled to DC to meet with our elected officials. There was a gentleman that has been on Leqembi for over 10 years now because he got on it back in the day when it was a trial. And when he said, when he said that he had Alzheimer's, I was just like, really? didn't seem like. And then when he was like, yeah, and I've been on this for 10 years, and I just ran the Boston Marathon, and I'm getting ready to do this. And it's like, wow, treatments do really work, but they're only for Alzheimer's. It's only for a very small window. And what about every other type of dementia? And I'm not saying that the research isn't coming, or the research isn't out there looking at all these other things. Right now, there is a treatment that will slow the progression, that has shown to slow progression in the middle stage of the disease. But when you look at that, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Like, every person is different, every person has different behaviors, reactions, what have you. With these medications, if it freezes where you are right now, if somebody has middle stage, it freezes where they're at. And yay, it's not going to progress. But middle stage is a very relative term, because that may mean that they may not wander at night, but it doesn't mean as a caregiver, you're not ripping out your hair because you're like running around as a 36-hour-a-day caregiver. Yes?
These new medicines you're speaking about, is there more information on your website about them?
There is, and I also sent you like a whole packet of what the research is actually looking at federally, but you can go onto our website and find all of this as well.
Those are all intervening.
Yes. So with that, you also have to be able to go to a clinic
Early on.
ongoing, over and over and over again. Right now, I can say he's now every 2 weeks. Originally, it was every one. I think he's now every 2 weeks. I think they're jumping to every 3. But he's doing well, yes.
You mentioned mild cognitive impairment, and then you said there's like a gap, and then Alzheimer's. Can you explain what you meant by
So there's not necessarily a gap. So mild cognitive impairment does not necessarily impact activities of daily living. Dementia does. Not all cognitive impairment will turn into a type of dementia, but all dementia starts out as cognitive impairment. So we really focus on early detection and early diagnosis. The detection is happening because the people are knowing things are going on. The diagnosis is not happening. So most people, when they get a diagnosis, they're getting further towards the middle stages of the disease. So when I say the sweet spot, it's only for this group of people that are transitioning from mild cognitive impairment into Alzheimer's, but not further down the line. Does that make sense?
Somebody may get a diagnosis of MCI though.
That will never turn into any type of dementia.
Well, but they may get, that may be the diagnosis, but you're talking about it's too late if they've got a diagnosis of Alzheimer's.
It could be. It just depends on how progressed it is, because it needs to be an early stage.
So should you be doing anything if you have a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment?
I would start talking to your doctor.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily mean that you would qualify for either of the 2 treatments right now, but I would start talking to your doctor if you have a diagnosis, or if you think anything's going on in general. Talk to your doctor. That's the biggest thing, because since doctors aren't necessarily diagnosing for whatever reason, because I mean, once you get that diagnosis, you have that diagnosis. And there is stigma with it. I mean, people have lost their jobs and their livelihood, and we don't live in a world where basic homeostasis is free. You know, I mean, food, shelter, water is what we need to live. But when you get into this, I mean, somebody at some point with dementia will need 24-hour care. But with the treatments, the sooner you know, And the sooner you can start going through the processes, because if your primary care does say, oh yeah, maybe you should get on this treatment, then you need to go somewhere like Banner Alzheimer's Institute. Or that's all you have down here, right? Is Banner Alzheimer's Institute. And that's like fairly new, right? Like just in like last 6 years. Otherwise you'd have to drive to Phoenix. But it's always talk to your doctor. But I can also say there's a lot of doctors that won't even prescribe the treatments because there's side effects. There's potential for brain bleeds. And I can say this: these are FDA. Every treatment out there, every medication has a potential side effect. And this is something, I'm not a doctor. You need to discuss this with your physicians. But if you think that one of these treatments is for you and your primary care or a other physician does not want to hear you, then you get a second opinion. Because it's your health, it's not their health. And some doctors won't give I'll throw a stat at you. Less than 50% of people with dementia get a diagnosis, and it's about 30% of the 50% that it's disclosed. So there's physicians out there that know you have dementia. See, you're the first person I had to pick up your chin. And I can say even with cancer, it's not 100% that it's disclosed, but it is I think it's like 97 or 98%. A lot of, over my time with the association, and this is all just from people, but I've heard, well, I don't even get into physicians. I will say within the long-term care world, we have had long-term care lobbyists say to us, why are you trying to make change? These people are going to die anyway. Which is the attitude. It's money over people. But as you can see, like, it's great to be like, my boss, this is my executive director. She loves saying, oh, we're in the age of treatment, we're in the age of treatment. And we are in the age of treatment. And it is a great moniker to say, especially when you're trying to raise money. And then I'm in the back saying, in my mind, with all of my advocates, but we're not in the age of diagnosis and disclosure, and you can have all of the treatments in the world. Because I think about, I want to say there's around 2,000 to 3,000 people in the country that are on these treatments. Now, some of it is, one, like if you take out the diagnosis and disclosure part, there's a lot of states that don't even have intravenous clinics to even go and get the treatment. There's a lot of states that don't have research, universities that do research that possibly can do these treatments. There's medical deserts that literally aren't like the desert like where we live in. So there's like a lot of factors out there. So it's like you can say we have, you know, everything in the world, but we don't look at, even in our own state, it's great if there's all of this stuff in the great state of Maricopa, but if it doesn't transpire throughout the whole state, what is the benefit to the whole state? We can't just do things in Phoenix where the largest population is. We need to look at the whole state.
I was at a talk previously this week, and in it, it said that Arizona is the #1 state where it is rising almost out of control.
So she said that she went to a workshop, and they said that basically Arizona has the fastest growth rate of Alzheimer's disease in the country. In the country.
Right. And to tell you the truth, I'm a transplant here from Ohio, been here 8 years, and I'm on my 9th doctor. And I've given them a grade of F-. Lack of communication, lack of follow through, lack of really digging into what's wrong with you. It's just surface. And that's my experience here. But
And I'm pretty sure, like, if you talked, I mean, I feel like when I meet with my primary care, if I get 10 minutes, and this is a virtual visit, you know, I mean, she doesn't even want to see me face to face, it seems, anymore. Like, it's a good visit, even though I'm waiting 30 minutes online for her to show up. And thankfully, you know, knock on wood, I don't, as far as I know, I don't have any type of chronic disease. But you start throwing all these other things in, and then you start throwing in just normal aging risk factors, because most people, if you have dementia, it's not the only thing that you have. And I've heard through the years that, oh, like a doctor may not tell you you have dementia because maybe your diabetes or your heart disease or something else will get you first, because it's a progressive disease and it can take a long time. But I can tell you, Alzheimer's, not dementia, Alzheimer's just came out with the first treatments a couple of years ago. We have treatments for heart disease, lung disease, cancer. There's no reason why anybody in America right now should ever develop AIDS. You all know that there's actually a daily pill that people can take to prevent HIV that is free, that is 99% effective. It is more effective than a condom. It has been out for decades. But like with dementia, the first person, Dr. Alzheimer's, diagnosed the first person with Alzheimer's, I think in 1917, 18 or 19, the late 19 teens. It was a woman that was in an insane asylum with younger onset. She was under the age of 65. The reason why this, I mean, even now I can say it's not uncommon for me to tell people where I work and, oh, well, I can't believe you remembered how to get here, or, you know, any type of snide joke. I don't, like, over the years, you just kind of tune it out. But if I had any gumption to be able to say, if I had a huge giant tumor on my face, would you make a joke about that? If I brought in my lung, my black lung, in a jar, would you make a joke about that? We still call this old-timers disease. We still say it's a normal part of aging. We still say it's just a touch of senility. None of those things are true. Do our brains work as well as they did when we were younger? No. I always give the example of my knees were amazing when I was 7. I could fall off a tree and land on my knees and get back up. Now, if I slowly go down on my knees, hopefully I can get back up. It's the same thing with your brains. You on the next slide.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Within public policy, the association has 3 different areas. We do federal affairs, we do federal policy, we do state affairs, we do state policy, and then advocacy. I oversee all of our federal and state grassroots advocacy efforts. So I primarily work with volunteers. The people in DC dictate what our federal asks are. We have a state government affairs director that only works in Arizona for Arizona. And then I do all of the others. You can go on to this. With the Alzheimer's Impact Movement, this is our advocacy arm and our policy arm. They do all of the policy. Their goal is to advance and develop policies to overcome Alzheimer's and all other dementia through increased investment in research, advanced care, and improved support. You go on the next one. Within our state priorities, these are our goals. Within these goals, our government affairs director, who is amazing, has all these other bullet points underneath each of these goals where she has to pick an area from, she has to pick something from each bullet point every year to work on to try to get passed in the state legislature. Could be through rules, it can be through policy, it could be through committees, what have you. But we have a little bit more freedom to decide what we have freedom to decide what we do at the state level. So what we do in Arizona is going to be completely different than what any other state is doing, even though all of the states at some point will have or will do something of the same thing. But I can't say, like, they just sent out a celebratory email of like all these states that had successes, and Texas, I don't know what it was for, but Texas just got like $3 billion for something dementia related through policy. We're not ever going to get that. We're not ever going to get that in Arizona. I mean, our state budget isn't that big. And yay for Texas. California brags about, like, you know, their $20-30 million that they get, you know, because they woke up on a Monday. And I'm saying that I'm originally from California, so I would just say that. But here, like with our ask, we're not asking for millions of dollars because our state budget doesn't even have, you know, millions and millions of dollars. But we do what we possibly can, you know, on that side. Through advocacy, we do, like I said, meet with our state elected officials. Throughout the state, I have about 60 core advocates that I meet with on an ongoing basis that meet with our elected officials. But as you can see, there's a lot more than 50 or 60 people here. This is at our state day that we had at the Capitol in January. And so on one day, we had all these people from throughout the state in 3 hours meet with all 90 elected officials. And we get things done. You on the next one. With this, we look at what has been done. Why are we holding these signs? The first treatment came out in 2021. It was FDA approved. All FDA approved treatments should be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. These weren't. We literally rallied in front of the White House in 2022, saying we need these treatments to be approved and covered, because for 1 year of this intravenous treatment, I think it was like $60,000. And even now that it is covered, it's still about $4,000 to $6,000 a year, which still is an exuberant amount for a lot of people. But this is literally, in 2022, I decided to get a group of people to walk downtown Phoenix at the end of June. We did 2 loops around the building and like, it was way too hot, let's go. Because we don't have a federal Medicare and Medicaid building in Arizona. So it was all symbolic. But it worked because advocates across the country did this. We don't tend to do things like this all that much, but it was something fun for the advocates to do. I can't necessarily say it was fun doing it in June, but it just was what it was. You go on the next slide. But if you want to know what our advocacy successes are, this isn't me, this isn't staff, and this isn't the Alzheimer's Impact Movement. This is individuals like you. Now, I started at the association in 2014, and federal research funding was $562 million. And I know you can't see it, but I'll have Jerry send you these slides. Because of advocates, in 2024, they got $3.8 billion in federal research funding. I apologize I did not update this slide, but we do have 2025 as well, and we still have $3.8 billion. We weren't able to get an increase, but we were able to keep it flat. Advocates have been able to increase federal research dollars by over 750% in a little over 10 years. And we had our first treatment. We had our second and our third. A first blood biomarker test just came out in 2025. Think about like if you can just go to your doctor, since they have to take labs anyways, that this is just one more test to where you don't have to worry about getting a spinal tap or a PET scan. And this is federal. So like when you say like, oh, what is my voice gonna do? What is my 2-minute story gonna say? I challenge that. Because this is just research funding. When I started, Alzheimer's was the least funded chronic disease. It is in the top 10 causes of death in the country. Does anybody know what number it is in our state? 4. And we don't talk about it. Like like we don't talk about it. Like where's the stigma from it? It's like there's no shame with this. I have yet to meet somebody with dementia that is an ogre. I've met some of their caregivers because they're so stressed out, but it's not because they're actual ogres. They just want to go to the bathroom, you know, let alone anything else. You can go to the next slide. Yes.
The blood biomarker that has been approved. What is that? Which one is that?
Like the name of it, I couldn't tell you off the top of it.
So, are you familiar with p-tau-C17
I'm
biomarker for Alzheimer's? That was last year that was being done. Do you know anything about that one?
I don't, but like FDA approved and research on the biomarker is 2 different things. Like I don't know, but I could find out for you. My business card is like over there, and just like shoot me an email. Because I will tell you, and I was actually talking to my executive director about this the other day. I get these bills passed, and then I move on to the next bill, and then I move on to the next bill. But with these biomarker tests, because we're going to start seeing more and more and more, I don't know particularly that one, but we could be talking about the exact same thing. This is a different direction. So these are all of the research funding again. And all of these are bills that we've passed in Congress. And you see the first one passed in 2011. The association was established in 1980. The first person diagnosed with the disease was in the late 19-teens. And the first piece of legislation was introduced in 2011. And I know you possibly can't see it. And that was the National Alzheimer's Project Act, which ensured that our federal government will start addressing the dementia crisis that actually is. And when you ask, like, do we have a crisis? Yes, because the first baby boomer turned 65 in 2012, and our population just kept growing and growing and growing. So if we don't have at least treatments, but let's push for the cures, well, there's gonna be a lot of us running around with dementia, and there's not enough caregivers, there's not enough professional caregivers now, and our family caregivers are gonna get so burned out. Because what happens, we're living longer, we have interventions and preventions for the majority of the other chronic diseases. So if your diabetes and your heart disease and your lung disease and everything else can be under control, and all of us have dementia, it's going to be a horrible world. To give you some just quick information about some of these bills. The Alzheimer's Accountability Act passed in 2014. What this bill does is it bypasses Congress. The National Institute of Health says, this is how much you need to invest in dementia research to have a cure by a certain amount of date. So it bypasses all of that bureaucracy. And so like right now we're asking for $118.5 million increase for federal research. Yes.
Is that group bipartisan?
It is. Everything is bipartisan. Yes. We do not, so we engage everybody. And in general, when advocates go meet with elected officials, they do learn legislation, but it's literally like a bullet point. It's, will you increase federal research funding by $118 million? We don't get yeses or no's. Well, usually we meet with staff anyway, so we're not going to get yeses or no's anyways. But it's all bipartisan, and we ask for sponsorship. And even at the federal government, they won't put sponsors on the list until it's almost even. And we always stick bipartisan, even though like in Arizona, the state legislature is Republican-led. So when we get bills introduced in Arizona, we do have a Republican introduce them because otherwise they will die. But we still need bipartisan support. At the federal level, especially right now, the margins are so low, but almost every, I'll say every bill, all of our bills, when they do get introduced, it's always a Republican. There's always Republican and Democrats on the introduction of the bill. It's always bipartisan. We always keep with the purple. And we always tell them, y'all need to bleed purple. If it hasn't impacted you, it's just a matter of time. The first judgment budget, which is said, we want to bypass Congress. They spend too long talking about nothing. It's both sides. They spend too long talking about nothing. We got that passed. So now you can see we've been able to increase funding and we have results. In 2017, Medicare came out with a billing code for physicians, primary care physicians, not neurologists, not neuropsychs, primary care physicians to code to pay for diagnosis and disclosure. 2017. Today in 2025, still less than 1% of physicians utilize this billing code. And it exists. Wait until I get into some of the state stuff. You'll be elated, but you'll also be pissed at the same time. So I'm just telling you right now. In 2018, we passed the Bold Infrastructure Act. Dementia needs to be addressed at the public health level, local. This creates grants for entities, colleges, universities, state health departments, public health departments, to apply for these grants to address dementia at a public health level. In 2022, the federal government reopened up the grant process, and our government affairs director was trying to get the Arizona Department of Health to apply for this BOLD grant because it's multi-years. So you apply for it and you're automatically guaranteed you're going to get so much money for like 5 years. The Department of Health in Arizona is so understaffed that they didn't even have the capacity to apply for a grant to actually get them support. Therefore, getting all of us support. So, Maricopa County Public Health applied for the grant and got it. Yay for the great state of Maricopa. But this, hopefully, like some of the programs that they establish will be able to be pushed out to everybody else, but only time will tell. We got the Old Americans Act reauthorized, and with that, we added a line to the multi-hundred-page Old Americans Act that anybody with a dementia diagnosis in the country, regardless of age, will get access to home and community-based services under the Older Americans Act. So it doesn't matter if you're in your 40s or what, you will get access as long as you have a dementia diagnosis. We got the Promoting Alzheimer's Awareness to Prevent Elder Abuse Act. We know that there's elder abuse in general. With dementia, it's even more tenfold. And then Improving Hope for Alzheimer's Act, we want to make sure that there's healthy outcomes, planning, and education. We need that early detection, early diagnosis, so the person with dementia can start making choices and decisions for their life and their care for their future with their loved ones. Just when I say in the end of 2024, I say we passed 2 appropriations asks. We got $3.8 billion in federal research funding. With the BOLD Act, there's an appropriations ask to it every year. We ask for $35 million to fully fund it. We got $38 million to fully fund it. And we also reauthorized the National Alzheimer's Project Act. We authorized the Alzheimer's Accountability Act, and we authorized the BOLD Act. These last 2 got signed into law by the president like 2 days before Christmas. So as an advocate, when you've been advocating for these for 2 years, because Congress is 2 years and these tend to be introduced earlier in the session, like pins and needles, like down to the minute, because you've literally been like living this for years. But we got everything passed. You can move on to the next one. State successes. The association is a little bit behind in state policy compared to federal. Not far, only 6 years. But it wasn't until 2018 when the association was like, wait, seems like we're able to like move hills. Maybe we should have like a bigger strategic purpose for our policy efforts. Because when I first started at the association, I was the director of programs, so I oversaw all of our programs and services, and the director of advocacy. With any job, they have all of these like expectations that they place on you. And in 2019, my position was split, and they asked me if I wanted to be the director of programs or if I wanted to be the director of public policy, because at the time I was going to be doing government affairs and advocacy in Arizona and Nevada. I am a social worker by trade. I came to the association because I wanted to be the program director. Advocacy was just tacked on to it. And it's great to have all these successes, but the reason why I chose to stay in advocacy is I am 1,000% in love with all of the advocates. I'm the one that gets people to rip off a Band-Aid and expose their wound, pour a little lemon juice, some salt, some of that mercurochrome from when I was a kid, everything that burns, share their stories. Literally, I'm not trying to be gross here, be in a meeting where everyone is crying so hard that you can't tell the difference between tears and snot. And then after that 15-minute meeting, get up and walk down the hallway. It's like, oh my God, that was so good. Almost every single time. And then we have to wait years to find out if anything is even coming to fruition. Because you can have all the sponsors of your bills in the world, but until that bill goes before a floor vote, you don't know. But at the state level, we've been able to appropriate, in 2018, we were able to appropriate $2 million for Alzheimer's research. We do have research facilities here in Arizona, not here in Green Valley, but we do have them here in Arizona. In 2019, We were able to get another $2 million. And then we were able to pass Senate Bill 1483, which authorized certain qualified financial professionals to report suspected financial exploitation to APS and financial oversight commissions to freeze transactions where exploitation is suspected. It's great that we have this. I don't think that it's working as well as it should, but we have it. There's going to be other things out when I show you that we have it. It's not necessarily working as well as it should, but we have it. You can go on to the next slide. Even in 2020, when the whole world shut down, we were able to get $1.125 million appropriated for Alzheimer's research. It was a cut in funding, but the world shut down. I mean, there was not really much we could do, and it was great that we got that. But in 2021, we were able to get $3.6 million for federal research, as well as appropriate $160,000 to the Department of Health to look at the impact of cognitive decline in Arizona. It's great to know what's going on nationally, but we need to know what's going on in our state to address what's going on in our state, as well as how many caregivers are in our state. Now, the caregiver one was not dementia specific. This was a survey that the state put on. The caregiver was like any type of caregiver, but the cognitive decline was specifically about cognitive decline. You go on to the next one. In 2022, things started getting a little bit exciting. Once again, we're able to appropriate $3.6 million for federal research, or for state research. And then the Department of Economic Security implemented major updates to the dementia training program for their APS services. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when Adult Protective Services was rehauling their training for their staff. And I just happened to say, it was literally a conversation like, Jerry, wouldn't it be great if you could like do this hour-long training with all of your staff? And they're like, great. It's an online training that now is part of all staff. Even the staff that currently worked at APS had to go through dementia training, and is still ongoing today. We can go on to 2023. In 2023, we were able to appropriate almost $1 million to establish a dementia service program within the Department of Health. And what this would do is create a dementia coordinator within the Department of Health to solely address dementia in the state. This was passed in 2023. We've had one person in this position so far. And I'm just going to say this is my biased opinion. The job description that the Department of Health created and the pay did not equal. Because I will tell you, like when we were advocating for this, it's like, oh, what if it's like a great job? Maybe I'll do this. Not in a million years. I don't even think I would. No, it was. They have revamped it, and they do have somebody now, and she's like super engaged. But we need more. Like we can't wait. We can't wait anymore. We also appropriated $750,000 for a public awareness campaign that focuses on rural and underserved urban communities, as well as got $4.125 million for research funding. And last year, we got past HB 2764, which required the Department of Health Services to establish rules that would require memory care facilities to train their staff on dementia care. You would hope. You would hope. So this was the bill when I said earlier, when somebody said, why are you doing this? They're all going to die anyways. So this is a bill that was passed. It was passed. Bipartisan support. This was originally introduced by, at the time, Representative Dunn from Yuma. It flew through the House, it flew through the Senate, and it was magically signed by the governor with no issues. But leading up to it, I would get long-term care facilities sending me emails saying, we're going to pull funding from your walks. We're not going to sponsor your walks. We're asking for training. It's only, I use this as an example because we also were working on this year as well, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Last month in May, just for my day-to-day job, I had to do 4 hours of annual tech training of if I see a flash drive in a parking lot, don't pick it up and stick it into my work laptop. I mean, that was just one of the trainings, but it was trainings like that. We're asking for an initial 8 hours of training, and it's not like if you start working at this long-term care facility and you're here for a month and you go to another one, these 8 hours carry with you, and then it's 4 hours each year. And you would think, is that enough? Not really. But training is only liable, it only helps the company. But we got a lot of pushback. You go on to the next slide. How do we do this? I don't think this video is going to work. But if you send out the slides, you can watch it. Each of these videos is like 30 seconds. But I will tell you this video right here is about an advocate named Mary. Her mother passed away from dementia, and then like a couple months later, her father was diagnosed. And she is currently his primary caregiver. So for Mary, you can go on to the next slide. Almost all of her advocacy actions, we have to do virtual visits with elected officials or their staff because she can't leave her dad. But the way we do advocacy most of the time is face-to-face meetings, either in person or virtual. We share our dementia stories over and over and over again. We are parrots. We do a lot of social media posts. I'm not really big in writing letters to the editor or op-eds because it's a crapshoot trying to get anything into a newspaper these days. But I do really push the advocate, and I say this figuratively and physically, I do push advocates in front of cameras to be interviewed because I do train advocates to be interviewed because at the end of the day, it's great because I can like throw out stats and everything in a news interview, but when you have a passionate volunteer talking to being interviewed by the news on why they do this, it's way more powerful. We do have 2 primary events. We have a state day in Phoenix at the Capitol, usually it's usually at the last week of January or the beginning of February. And then we have an advocacy forum in DC where advocates across the country travel to DC, and then we have one big huge hill day where we don our pageant sashes, and it's literally just packed with purple people. What do we do? Yes.
This goes back to your presentation. I think I have a good primary care now, and I just had my annual Medicare. But the little mental test we have isn't the one that you're talking about that he could diagnose. Or is that what you're talking about?
Was it a screening? Was it something, draw the clock, I'm going to tell you through?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
That's the thing to mention because I'm really worried.
So, so I will say this, like if you have a concern, one, always talk to your doctor, but you got to look at, I hate the analogy of, oh, I lost my keys or I put my keys in the fridge. Like I can't ever find my keys. You got to look at, with dementia, it's not just forgetting. Dementia affects all, at some point will affect all functioning of the brain.
So, for example, I just noticed myself a spatial relationship and I was an art person in the art department, but on a daily basis, this is going on with simple things, not just for the art. So I have real concerns, and the only person who observes these things is me. So so how do I bring that up with my doctor?
Just that.
There is a more extensive cognitive test that you can ask to be given at your primary doctor.
Correct.
Because that little test that they do,
Oh, that I
the 3 words and the things, yeah, that is
I know.
not the one that's gonna tell them anything about you. You can, and I don't know, maybe not in your Medicare wellness check, because that covers nothing.
So his was least an hour with me in person. I have a good guy.
You do.
But was the hour including the cognitive screen?
Well, if you call that cognitive.
Right.
Because with the cognitive screen, that should add like 30 to 45 minutes to it. Like, I mean, that's the thing is like, this is something that already should be. This isn't anything like we're advocating for, or like, this is something that's already supposed to be in place. But what you just shared with all of us, that's what you need to say. Because like especially with like the spatial aspect, because it could be a lot of things.
Yeah, but it's so significant, it brings me to tears at times, where I'm trying to do something that maybe 2 months ago I really could do. And I'm just trying and trying and trying, and I'm crying.
Right.
So, okay, I think I asked.
These are things like, yes, like if you think there's something wrong, start documenting it. That way you can bring it to your doctor and be like, look, these are all of the things. Like I said, if they're not listening to you, not all doctors listen to us.
And you know, there's also stigma, and stigma with this, I understand, because I had a neighbor who now lives out back this year for the first time, and brilliant man, but he disclosed to me, but it took a long time for him to disclose he had Alzheimer's. But, you know, if you put that stigma on top, if you have stigma for something else, or stigma from a disability, or stigma from mental and behavioral health issues, you know, your plate is like,
I agree.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Whichever one you first. I did.
Okay, I'll just go. So, some time ago, several years ago, I had done some reading, and one of the things that was pointed out in this.
It's for the recording.
Okay.
So it's not,
One of the things that
you gotta get closer.
was pointed
No, it's
out,
okay. So,
that was pointed out to me at the time,
it's just for the recording
were
only.
the possibility of amyloid deposits in the brain causing dementia.
Yes.
Okay, that was.
So amyloid plaque buildup is the primary indicator of Alzheimer's. It's not the only. There are people that do not have any amyloid that do have Alzheimer's, but the vast majority do. Alzheimer's, and I will get to your Alzheimer's, and I'm just using Alzheimer's as I'm just saying specifically Alzheimer's. Not all of it's genetic. And you can go get genetic testing to see if you have the APOE4 gene. Doesn't mean you'll ever develop Alzheimer's. However, if it is in your family, you are more likely to develop it than not. I have an advocate that lives in Scottsdale. Her husband's father passed away last summer. He was the youngest of 9. 7 had already passed away from Alzheimer's. So now, and her husband, I think, is the 3rd of 8. And so she's like, I don't want this to happen to my husband. And so she's like so hyper vigilant with like her, if you think anything, tell your doctor. But it's one of those things where my sister, like years ago, when it seemed like everybody's going out and getting genetically tested to see what diseases you may be prone to or whatever. I had told her at the time, I was like, look, you do you live your own life, but you can have like the results saying that you're predisposed to all of these things. Does that mean you're just going to sit around and wait until you develop the disease, or are you just going to continue to live? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I can all say we're precancerous because cancer is just the multiplication of cells dividing over and over again, and our whole bodies are made of cells. Doesn't mean we're all going to get cancer. Just like we all have brains, doesn't mean we're all going to get dementia. Now, does it mean our brains are going to function? I can't remember names for the life of me. I used to be so good with names. I do have mental health issues, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it. And one of my medications that I'm on, a potential side effect is memory loss. And when you work at the Alzheimer's Association, you're very hypervigilant. And it took me a while. And the thing with names is it's always like actors and actresses. I am like a huge movie buff, but I am like that first person like, oh, that one person and that one movie, because I just can't remember anymore. I just feel like my name bank in my brain has filled up, and I only have so many more names, and I would rather know the names of real people than celebrities. But it's one of those things where I went and talked to my doctor about it. And it was hard for me. It was hard when I went and was like, I think something might be wrong with my brain in general. It was another going in and saying, it took me about 3 years of working at the association to be like, I don't want to lose my job because I might have dementia. I mean, at the time I was in my early 40s. And, you know, I was like, I just started this job a couple years ago and I'm doing really well and I'm just getting it now and I can speak about it. And it was scary to say that to my doctor. And her response is, go off this medication. We'll put you on something else and we'll see. I am now back on that medication. Still can't remember names. And I'm okay with that. But I will say, talk to your doctor.
I was going to say, we have different types of practitioners. Some of us have a nurse practitioner, some have an MD, some have a physician's assistant. Every level of education is different, their experience is different. And if you have cancer, you may want to go to a specialist to treat your cancer. Same with, you know, if you have memory loss. I sent my mom to a geriatrician when her practitioner would not, could not, did not diagnose her over and over again. So I think sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and say, we're going to see somebody else.
Right.
Want to finish these 2 slides?
Yes. So what we're doing now, go ahead. At the federal level, we're asking for a $113 million increase for federal research funding. We're asking for $35 million to fully fund BOLD. We have 3 bills. One, we're asking for a tax credit for up to $5,000 for caregivers, not just dementia caregivers, any caregiver. It just happened to be the Alzheimer's Association, so we're just focusing on dementia caregivers. The next one is the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, also known as the ASAP Act. Currently, the FDA-approved blood biomarker test is not approved to be covered by Medicare. So this bill is passed. It will be. You see, we got all these little hurdles that we have to go through. And then this last one is accelerating access to Alzheimer's and dementia training, the ADAPT Act, which creates training programs for your primary care physicians to diagnose and disclose. This is the second time. This is the second Congress that this has been introduced because it died the first one. It made no traction in the last Congress. So hopefully we can this year because we need to get that up there. You can go on the next slide. And then our state priorities, we had House Bill 2182 that was introduced by Representative Bliss. And the reason it's scratched out is I literally did this morning. It is dead as of a couple of weeks ago. What this bill would have done is to get access to Altex, Arizona Long-Term Care, Medicaid. Currently, people with dementia, it's over 50% of people that try to get Altex get denied. And then through the appeal process, they get approved. This bill would have just cut out the appeal process and just got people approved. It flew through the House, it flew through the Senate, and then due to politics, it has been cut from the budget. If you don't know what's going on with the budget at our state right now, yesterday the governor vetoed 2 budgets, the House has a budget, the Senate has a budget, nobody could agree. If you want to look at the politics, there's so much in-party fighting at our Capitol, it is crazy. But it's like that every year, so I just want you to know. So this one is dead. Currently, Senate Bill 1210, which would extend the awareness campaign that we got introduced a couple of years ago, because we need to make sure that people know about this and they are continuously talking about this. We should not be shy. There is nothing wrong with saying that you have dementia or that you're a dementia caregiver. Right now, we're just waiting for the budget. Our government affairs director is literally on pins and needles right now because this literally a week ago was in the budget and then was stripped from the budget, then was added back to the budget, so we don't know. And then with the memory care rules. So we got the memory care rules passed in 2024, but it has to go through this bureaucratic rules process that came to fruition at the end of May, where it was a 2-week process where this rules committee appointed by the governor goes over all of these different rules that they're going to be changing at the state level. It's the first time I've ever gone through this. It was one of the weirdest things ever. The first week, the lobbyists destroyed us, obliterated us. They were saying that staff are already trained, we don't need this, this is going to cost billions of dollars, it's going to bring down the long-term care community, no one's going to be able to provide services. We know that people are escaping long-term care communities. We know people are dying from long-term care communities. I have an advocate whose mother was murdered by another resident, and they both had dementia. They both had advanced Alzheimer's. They were both in their 90s. I'm not going to go into details about the graphic murder, but it was a graphic murder in 2021. And lobbyists were fighting us. And so a week later, the Rules Committee was getting ready to vote. So I padded the meeting with 20 advocates to share their story, and it passed unanimously. So now, and there's a grace period because this is supposed to go into effect Tuesday. Tuesday's the 1st, right? Whenever the 1st of July is. But since it was the rules were just approved a month ago, the Department of Health is giving all of the long-term care facilities a grace period. This is the beginning. It's still not enough. As you can see, we're getting things done. Did anybody know about any of this? But we're not there yet. We're not there until the vision is made where I don't have a job with the Alzheimer's Association. So any questions? But thank you all for your time.
So we have, yes, thank you so much. You've been more than generous with your time, and you're willing to stay. And
heck yeah.
So keep at it, keep going to push. James, it's really, really great to meet you. You got a great personality for this. Clearly, you love to talk and also lots of issues I have with you because when you talk about not remembering names, and then you're rattling off the names of some of these meds and some of these genes and everything like that. I think that's pretty good.
Meds are good. I can name meds. I just can't name people.
I do want to encourage you to sign up for our email newsletter. We will send you, if you're not already signed up, we will send you his PowerPoint presentation. Also to let you know that all of our dementia forums are on our website for our church. Some of them by, for example, a neuropsychologist in terms of talking about the evaluation process. So there's a lot of information that we do have available for you. And otherwise, Memory Cafe, as I mentioned, on the 10th of July. So there we are. Anything else? A couple of hands came up. Yeah. Steve?
Are you aware of a book called Untangling Alzheimer's?
A book?
Untangling.
I am not.
It's written by a lady, last name is Cunningham, and I could recommend that book to anybody that has any diagnosis of any stage of Alzheimer's or dementia, because it's written in such a way that even I could understand it, and it goes through the whole thing. And it's really been a great help to me, and I'm out there myself, but I am a caregiver. And I would highly recommended people go to their library and look and see if they can find that book, because I'm not loaning mine out.
I will tell you.
What was the name of it
You
again?
can add that to our
name of
list
it again?
also.
Untangling Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's, yeah.
Years.
Thank you, Steve. I can get that, we can make a copy available through the church too, so we can do that. And I can include that in the website information. I did, when you mentioned the book, I did want to also mention Judy's book. Judy is from Green Valley and wrote a book about her journey with her husband. It's quite fun in many ways, the ways in which she talks in a very, very loving way about the relationship that she has. So these copies, she came and was one of our speakers, and so they're $15 if you want a copy of that. So there was one other hand here, and I kind of cut somebody off. Yeah.
I don't know if I was the hand or not, but I was going to comment on the training. That just stuns me. And I tell you what surprised me, even, and maybe the facility my husband's in is a little bit more quick on the uptake, but they just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, my husband's just in the facility, for, not quite there 4 months yet, here in Green Valley, and I'll make a couple comments. Anyway, they were talking, all the staff was talking a couple weeks ago about this training they're going through, and they're telling me what they've learned. You know, and I've been a caretaker for my husband with dementia for probably 3 years now, and they're telling me these things. I'm like, you working with people, and memory care, and you already know this.
Yeah.
I was just like, I mean, they were excited. They were loving the training, but I was just amazed that this was like new information.
I don't want any of you to think
Thank you very much.
that, I mean, that is, yes. I will say this, there are some amazing facilities out there. There are some amazing memory care facilities out there that have loving, dedicated staff that love and treasure your loved ones. That is not all of them. And I will tell you, us getting the 8 initial, day 1, and the 4 ongoing, was the compromise with the lobbyists because we wanted more. Because there's so many, and we're not talking about, oh, we want to have a training on what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, or what's Alzheimer's and Lewy body and frontal temporal and vascular. It's how to bathe with dignity, how to feed, what is palliative care. Somebody with dementia knows no time, so if you're just going to be feeding them at 6, noon, and 5, and their schedule is 36 hours, you know, like there's so much more that we can do. I will tell you, in Nevada, we had a bill that would mandate first responders to be dementia trained. And all of the first responders were 100% behind it until it started like the bureaucratic process. And then in Nevada, fire pulled out. Oh, we don't have time for the training. Police pulled out. Ambulance pulled out. So in Nevada, the advocates are celebrating because, yes, we got our first responder bill passed. And the first responders are people that work in jails and prisons, which is great because who cares for people with dementia in jails and prisons? There's a woman in the Yavapai County Jail who lived somewhere up in Cottonwood with dementia, lived by herself, and just decided, it's open frontier land. Your nearest neighbor could be. She just went outside and was screaming. She just felt like she wanted to yell. And somebody called the police. And she's been in jail for, I think at this point, almost 2 years. Because there's nobody to release her to. But she's getting care in jail. Like, to think about that. To think that's what our society is. And it's, I don't know what it's like they can't do a compassionate release because there's nobody compassionate to release her to. And when I was told this in like November of last year, because we were like looking at what do we want to do with the state legislature this year. Because we thought like with the training, the fact that we went after Medicaid, I was completely shocked. I thought Medicaid was something we were going to tackle years down the line. And even with the Altex bill, we had no issues. And until now, and I will say this, it is not anybody in our state house, it is not anybody in our state senate that does not want to be involved with this. So there's only one other person.
It's training for people who work in the facilities. How can you have that available to the people who are actually caregiving at home? Because, you try and keep your loved ones home as long as you can,
Correct.
rather than placing. And it's expensive to put them somewhere.
Yes.
So how could a caregiver go about getting the training that they need to be able to?
So that's where other entities, not necessarily the Alzheimer's Association, because our workshops are broad overviews of everything, like skill building things. You would need to find organizations, entities that provide caregiver skill training.
Well, we do have a program called Stress Busters, and are you familiar with that? Yeah. So that is a training in some ways. I mean, it's a training about yourself as caregiver,
Right.
and finding ways to deal with your own stress. And that's a part of the piece,
Is
but
that
that
here
may
in
not be
church?
everything.
No.
It is a program that Gary and Pam Chambers do, and I'm happy to pass on their phone number to you.
Can you put that in one of your newsletters? So
Pardon me?
in your newsletter?
I can
I'll
put it
find
in
out.
the email that I send out too. Just make
I
sure
don't
you
know
pass-
down here,
No, I'm on it.
but I do know, I just know like in Phoenix, Hospice of the Valley has now a dementia campus, a beautiful dementia campus. And I know that they do skilled training for caregivers, but I also don't know if they go into your home. I think it's one of those things that you have to go to them, but don't quote, but it's also another issue of like, not everybody can just
Right.
drop what they're doing to like learn a skill. But I don't know down here, but let me do some research for that.
That's a good question.
That is a great question.
I will shoot you an email,
Perfect.
and then you'll have my email.
Yes.
I have two places. The San Juanito Food Bank has training for people. for caregivers. And the second one is right catty corner to across the street. They just opened senior helpers. And they actually have where they can help with foyers and teach people how to do that. And they'd be happy to do that.
We used to do a 10-week caregiver training and then a 7-week early stage partner training. And I couldn't even tell, I'm not the program director anymore, and I couldn't tell you what. They were grant funded because they were actually clinical trials through Arizona State University. I think Arizona State might still be doing those, but I think it's different formats because those were in person, but you would also have like a care consultant that would meet with you and like, how are you working on these? But it was more like socio-emotional stuff, not necessarily like all of the like every aspect of caregiving. But because it was more like it had like almost everything in it. But I'll say this, like after this I'm going to go have a dinner with one of my advocates from Tucson, and he is a caregiver for his wife. And when you see somebody that has like amazing support, he's got like amazing support, but he's got like a huge family that provides all that support. Correct. I mean, he just got back from a 2-week camping trip with his wife who has advanced Alzheimer's. And you would think that, wow, like if you saw like the photos and everything, you were like, how was he able to do it? And it's interesting because I'll have other caregivers will say, how is Mark doing this? I'm like, Mark has 800 people. Not most people don't have one, you know? And so you can't look at that outlier, yay for Mark, that he has all of these people, but it's like, I want to say like, he might be one of 5 that I've met in my almost 11 years at the association that has like a huge network. But
I wanted to thank you for your enthusiasm.